The term neoclassicism refers to a style of art and architecture and design that first became popular in Europe and North America in the second half of the 18th century, and that was strongly influenced by ancient Greece and Rome. Both in concept and execution, the neoclassical style was a reaction against the visual, proportional, and thematic excesses and organicism of the earlier European Baroque style. This new style emerged from a rising interest in ancient art and ideas that literally were brought to light through 18th century unearthing of ancient sites, such as Herculaneum and Pompeii. The influence of these archaeological discoveries spread across the Western world. In 1778, Charles Louis Clarisseau, Thomas Jefferson's assistant architect of the Virginia Capitol building, remarked, "Let us learn from the ancients how to submit the rules to genius." Before long, paintings and buildings and decorative arts were replete with perfectly proportioned classical columns and pedimented roofs, toga-wearing subjects and images of gods and goddesses, and ornament such as Greek and Roman-inspired swags and bellflowers and the like. To this day, we continue to celebrate the origins of the neoclassical style, but still largely under-recognized are the innovative ways the style actually broke rank with the aesthetic rules of classicism. Between 1750 and 1850, artists, artisans, and architects creatively reinvented, reproportioned, and reconceived ancient designs to meet the needs and expectations of the increasingly modern world that was being built up all around them. In 1808, a large suite of furniture was designed by the American architect and designer Benjamin Henry Latrobe for the Waln residence in Philadelphia. This chair was among them. In William and Mary Waln, a newly wealthy merchant couple looking to distinguish themselves with the latest fashions, Latrobe found patrons who enthusiastically funded the first dwelling based on his rational house principles. Latrobe's rational house philosophy was a strategy for modernizing classical architecture to suit the climate, social activities, and household management of the early United States. The ancient Greek klizmos design that this chair utilizes had only recently been revived by French and English designers, and would have seemed shockingly and ironically modern to American consumers. Latrobe and Brideport made this ancient form more palatable for the Walns by enveloping the chair in ornamental painting. Associated with the established American decorative practice, fancy. This chair and its suite are often recognized for their early use of a classical form in American seating furniture. Yet its fancy painting is divergent from the unadorned and sculptural klizmoi of ancient Greece. American fancy painting, a derivation of fantasy, was meant to have an immediate and exciting visual effect that transports the viewer from the mundane to the extraordinary. Latrobe's chairs expanded upon this design tradition by imitating the Etruscan colors of ancient Greek pottery through its paintwork. Each crest rail of the suite of the Waln chairs is unique. This example, found in the Chipstone Foundation collection, features griffins and a lyre. In a way, Latrobe's somewhat radical neo-move was to take a pure classical chair form and then, in a sense, make it more appealing for its contemporary audience. The designs of ancient Egypt, Greece, and Rome were his inspiration, but the end product was very much his own idea of what classicism could be when reimagined. You know the old saying, things aren't always what they appear to be? We actually experience this every day through a kind of visual trope called a skeuomorph. This strange Greek-inspired word describes a derivative object that retains ornamental design cues from structures that were necessary in the original. The fake wood paneling in this room, or this electric light in the shape of a candle, are examples of this. This chair was made by Duncan Phyfe of New York City between 1810 and 1815, and it imitates the sella curulus, a type of ancient Roman folding chair used as a throne by imperial officials, with their curved X-form legs. But this chair is made of mahogany, a wood that was unknown to ancient Romans. And this chair also definitely does not fold like the sella curulus. Additionally, Phyfe invented a back for this traditional stool form to add extra comfort. This was done because for Phyfe and his clients, the curule form was not solely for ancient royalty anymore. Rather, it was a design now available in large sets for purchase by style-conscious clients for use in their parlors and dining rooms. By turning the sella curalis into a modern side chair, Fife created an imaginative skeuomorph that took the basic form of an ancient throne, removed its original function as a portable folding chair, and instead brought it into the homes of style-conscious early American furniture buyers, who had an appreciation for ancient Rome. A key part of the revisionism of neoclassicism was old symbols taking on new meanings. For example, although the ancient Romans enjoyed tables with supports made from mythological creatures, they were never applied to furniture as heraldic symbols like they are here. This circa 1815 card table was made by Charles-Henri Lannuier, an immigrant French cabinet maker who catered to the furniture-buying elite of New York. The top is veneered in expensive mahogany and mounted with gilded brass, but visually, the legs steal the show. With their bold carving and combination of paint and gilding, from a formal art historical or stylistic perspective, the legs are zoomorphic, and in fact, combine different parts from several different animals. The top of the table is immediately supported by carved dolphins that stand upon a lower shelf that in turn is supported by what appear to be lion's paw feet. The painted legs feature an antique green paint that was meant to mimic the color of ancient Greco-Roman bronze sculptures. Another neo aspect of this piece is found in the details of the dolphins, which feature fish scales. Classical civilizations encountered dolphins in the Mediterranean, and their painted or sculptural depictions of these mammals, as in real life, do not show scales. So Lannuier actually isn't depicting a classical dolphin at all. At some point in medieval France, the true physical appearance of dolphins was altered in art, as they began to be depicted with scales. In fact, scaled dolphins became an extremely important symbol of French heraldry. So how then can we usefully think about the revised classical vocabulary of Lannuier's creation? In ancient Greece, dolphins were believed to be the helpers of the gods. Similarly, in ancient Rome, they were believed to be the messengers of Poseidon. Lannuier may have had such mythological allusions in mind, but he still opted visually for a French medieval depiction of the mammal which conveyed to his elite customers his immersion in French neoclassical style, and that he was, as his bilingual trade cards advertised, a French cabinet maker from Paris. Now a common symbol at Thanksgiving, cornucopias, or horns of plenty, are classical symbols of abundance. This table has them carved into the apron, possibly alluding to Ceres, the god of agriculture, or Dionysus, the god of fertility. Perhaps these combined elements evoked in the viewer an ancient duality of Apollo, who represented logic and harmony, versus Dionysus, who embodied madness and frivolity. Like the cornucopia itself, this table overflows with abundance. It was made in the 1830s in New York, probably by the firm of Joseph Meeks & Sons. The elegant veined black marble top sits on top of a bulging entablature, which is adorned with stenciled leaves, and the legs are made of the same marble, which was referred to at the time as Egyptian, although it actually came from Italy. On the lower shelf, an enormous gilded lyre stands as a symbol of Apollo, the patron of music. And the swans may be similarly interpreted as symbols of Apollo because of an ancient myth stating that swans sing before their deaths. But on the other hand, the table's contemporaries may have understood them as the birds of Venus, presumably because swans pulled the chariot of Venus. All of these specific classical architectural traditions, mingled with mythological symbols, create a smorgasbord of ancient Rome and Greece. This stylistic eclecticism is the neo of its neoclassicism. Meeks purposefully referenced design elements from the classical world, but then did not adhere to a strict grammar of classical ornament or mythological correctness. Instead, he provided his clients with a multi-sensory creation, one that offers its viewers a playful test of their ability to navigate a range of Western allegories and visual references. The secrétaire habitant, or French secretary as it was known in America, was introduced to the United States by emigrant cabinet makers at the end of the 18th and beginning of the 19th century. Like its European forerunner, American secretaires habitants were steeped in classicism, but followed a different paradigm for adapting ancient design. Rather than reviving an ancient form, the secretaire habitant was classicized through its decorative architectural elements. This was the result of almost no examples of case furniture surviving from the classical world, but it created an opportunity for innovation. The shared function of case furniture and architecture to create space and enclosures inspired contemporary cabinet makers. They adapted classical architecture principles to the contemporary form of the secretaire habitant. The lower portion utilizes pilasters with capitals that are shorter and less ornamented than the upper level. Under neoclassical design principles, the most ornamented columns were reserved for decorating and thereby drawing focus to that level of the building which contained the most important public rooms. Here, the most elaborate columns flank the fall front desk, the focal point of the piece. Furthermore, the extravagantly constructed and veneered mahogany and maple interior of the desk plays into the contemporary Western architectural practices of more highly ornamented interiors and restrained exteriors. Like a doll's house, this secretaire habitant has adopted the ornaments of the classical world, coupled them with contemporary architectural philosophies, and applied them on a diminutive scale, reimagining classical architecture in a neo-way that would have been unrecognizable to the ancient Romans and Greeks. This chair's reliance on organic forms as its principal decoration reflected the contemporary school of thought and design termed the true style. The true style was a fashion rooted in the belief that the artists of the classical world should be revered for their virtues and stability. But it was more than aesthetic. Philosophically, the true style argued that the highest aims of 18th century artists should be to attain the primitive purity of nature, as they believed the ancients had before them. It was inherently a neo-movement because it discouraged imitation. Artists attempted to instill their creations with what they believed to be the soul of classical style, not its particular features. Crafted in Salem at the close of the 18th century, this chair was inspired by Plate 8 of George Hepplewhite's The Cabinet Maker and Upholsterer's Guide from 1789. This side chair, however, departs significantly from the Hepplewhite design. The shell motif and acanthus leaf border utilized in Hepplewhite's design have been abstracted and minimized, obscuring any imitation of classical ornament. However, visual allusions to classicism abound on this chair, and include the balanced geometric shape of the parts, the abundant use of fresco-like natural imagery, including the use of ornamental garlands of roses and descending bellflowers. Feathers appeared not only in frescoes but were also used to adorn the helmets of Roman centurion soldiers, and even earlier by the Etruscans. Through its nearly exclusive use of organic forms as painted decoration, its stark white color, and its delicate oval frame, this side chair is a product of that perceived aesthetic of classicism, by omitting any direct imitation of classical ornament and embracing nature. To be sure, it is crucial for us to remember and to celebrate the ways in which the 18th and 19th century neoclassical style in the arts and architecture was inspired by the classical past. But we also need to recognize the novelty inherent in their designs. Benjamin Henry Latrobe, Duncan Phyfe, Charles-Henri Lanoyer, and the other early American cabinet makers that we have discussed purposefully shaped this movement. And to this day, their works delightfully expand the world of classicism as we know it. For them and so many other style leaders of the time, it seems apt to quote the Latin phrase, non ducar duco, or I am not led, I lead. Because they did not strictly mimic the rules of classical art and architecture. Instead, these designers and builders who took us on this journey added their own distinctive ideas and designs. They, in effect, invented the neo side of neoclassicism. With each piece they made, they expanded the world of classicism and left us a piece of themselves. These pieces help us to understand their ideas as well as the ideas of their time.